Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Will you all please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Cheryl. Will you take roll?
Present. Present.
Present. Present.
Okay, so I am looking for a motion to excuse council members Jermaine Cornegay, Paula Kelly, and Jared Couch.
So moved. Madam Mayor, I move that we excuse the absences of Councilmember Couch, Councilmember Kelly, and Councilmember Cornegay.
All right.
Second.
Okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. And I am looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Judith Dunley, seconded by Councilmember DeYoung. Do we have any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And now I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. And this would be 1 through 10.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 10.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilmember Kinzer, seconded by Dunley. Any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. So we have no special guests tonight. So we'll move on to staff reports. Chief Tucker?
All right, just a couple of updates on things. We just got our body cameras in. We have the body-worn cameras that are going to be issued to each officer. Bill Chambers has those in and are getting them all set up, hooked up, whatever it is that he does, he's doing that to them. And we're hoping to get them out in the field on each officer as soon as possible. So that's been one of our goals for a while, and we finally just got that figured out. Sergeant McElwraith has been in contact with the Phoenix Recovery Service over in Mount Vernon and got a connection for getting Narcan or naloxone issued to each officer. And we're just getting the final, all the things worked out for that. And we'll be having officers carrying that. For those that don't know much about it, it's a specific counteragent to an opioid or heroin overdose. And we're not really planning on having it for people in the field that we run into. We actually have a really, we're right there with the fire department, and the fire department's so close behind us. We have it for that for an emergency. We actually have it for our officers if they get an accidental exposure. We've been seeing fentanyl come into the area, and fentanyl's one of those killer drugs that this may save one of our lives and as well. We're going to have them set up in our evidence room. So we've got that set up, and probably in the next month or so we'll get the training on that, which there's really no downside to that for us to carry it. Dean has a whole bunch of medical things that he has to do for carrying that on his rigs. We don't. You could go buy it if you had a need for it. So we're kind of working with a local treatment provider to get the appropriate stuff and keep it stocked up and all that. And we'll fill you in how that goes for us. On Tuesday morning at about 4 a.m., we had a burglary out on Fruitdale Road. Councilman Owen brought me a note from a gentleman who called him about it. But there was a couple of questions that came up with this. The subject that committed the burglary had just left Pioneer Center, and there was some question as to why would Pioneer Center turn somebody loose and just let them go rampage in the city. Well, I contacted leadership up at Pioneer Center and talked to a manager up there, and one of the things that I found out is they don't have anybody up there that is not a voluntary member, and if they want to walk away, they can. So this subject wasn't turned loose, and when they do discharge somebody, they don't do it at 1 o'clock in the morning. And when they do turn somebody loose, they take them to somewhere, a bus station, back home. Some of the questions that people had is, why would they turn this guy loose and just let him wander around in town and cause hate and discontent? That's not the case. They really had no control over this subject. And if they do believe that a subject's going to be a threat, they typically call us, and that's been our experience. They didn't have any indication with this, but this guy was let loose at 1 o'clock in the morning, and by 4 o'clock he'd broken into a couple of houses. One of them was an empty rental, but it was next door to a subject who, when he came banging on their back door, that local resident held the subject at gunpoint for us to go arrest. We're kind of like citizens getting pre-deputized, I guess, and taking that kind of action. Fortunately, nobody was injured, and people were scared a little bit, but nobody got injured, and then we have one subject in custody for burglary and car prowl. And that kind of led to maybe an invitation. I suggested that the supervisor, Julia Dudley, up there at Pioneer Center, who knows the mayor, contact the mayor and possibly come down and maybe give you all a brief at some time as to what's going on up at Pioneer Center and some of the challenges they're facing with not having a secure detox center, which has been an issue for all of us to deal with. We don't have a place for people to be securely held who are going through that sort of crisis, and it's a combination of mental health crisis and drugs and alcohol have been added into the Involuntary Treatment Act criteria for us to take somebody in involuntarily, but we have to have certain things in place to do with them. We can take them, but there's nowhere to send them for treatment right now. So we're going to be working on that. And finally, our favorite holiday of the year is coming up next week. The holiday where people tend to set things on fire and cause regular explosions, all of which are illegal. Almost everything is illegal that goes on the 4th of July. We try to be fair about it, and we try to use a level of common sense. If you are shooting off safe and sane type stuff, we don't care. That's not our business. If you're firing off the illegal stuff, there's usually that little time during the 4th of July between 10 and 11 or 12 that people are doing that. There's not much we can do about it. We try to deal with the ones that are doing it unsafely, setting trees on fire, houses on fire, neighbors on fire, friends on fire, that kind of thing. And we pray for rain. That's always awesome on the 4th of July. A nice rainstorm about 9 o'clock on 4th of July is the best thing ever. But we're actually going to be gearing up for those people that have decided they're going to start celebrating the 4th of July tonight and through the weekend, and blowing stuff up at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we're going to start hitting those hard, and they don't get much mercy from us, and actually will end up in court having to explain themselves. Hopefully we'll get a few good catches on that. But so we're prepped up for that, and then we're all staffed up. We're got all our plan for the 4th of July parade next week. So, and that's all I have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, I've got, we got handed to us this evening the local cooperative agreement between the City of Sedro-Woolley and Skagit County for the training hub, which we've discussed before. This is their final draft, I guess, is what we're going to call it, until we get a chance to review it. This is so we can provide the OTAP, which is the ongoing training for the EMS personnel, and the community CPR through the county. So we'll take a look at that, and if it looks okay to us, we'll bring it back to the council for ratification. We're doing our test. Just a reminder, July 14th is the test for volunteers. Okay. Don't worry, Harold. We also, like Lynn said, we're gearing up for the 4th of July. We're set for that day. We've already had several grass fires, and not started by fireworks, but just uncontrolled burning that we've been dealing with. So even though we've had some rain, it is still extremely dry out there. So we've had a couple of those here recently that are a little bit taxing. So just urge people to use caution. We have for the Finance Committee, you'll be seeing a bill come through for $2,000 for a set of jaws or for cutters. We broke our cutters recently on a motor vehicle accident and took the chips right out of them, so we had to replace the teeth on those. They're a spendy, expensive pair of scissors. They're $1,000 per set for each tooth, and those will hopefully last a little bit longer. The last one's lasted at least about 10 years, so it wasn't too bad. And then if there's a chance, if I can just meet with the police fire committee, which would be Brenda and Chuck is here, then Jared isn't here, for about 5 minutes after the meeting. That's all.
Thank you. Have a nice time in Hawaii. John?
So I had an opportunity to attend the Washington State Joint Legislative Task Force on Water Supply earlier this week. Legislature put some money into trying to find a fix for the potable water problem in Skagit County, which doesn't really affect Sedro-Woolley at all because we're served by the PUD entirely, but it is a larger issue in Skagit County. And the legislature put together a task force to address it. The co-chair is Senator Wagner, and the other co-chair is Senator Christine Litton. They held a meeting with 6 other members of the legislature and invited several members that are of the community that are affected by the issue, including all of the jurisdictions, the PUDs, Anacortes PUD, as well as Skagit PUD. We also heard from Snohomish PUD. And then we heard from perspectives from those jurisdictions, as well as from the Snohomish Indian tribal community and the Soxhawtla Indian tribe, and Department of Ecology kind of gave an overview of what's going on. So this was just the first step. They'll be taking future steps, and we'll keep keeping an eye on it. But like I said, it's not entirely a Sedro-Woolley City issue, but it is a regional issue. So we'll continue to monitor. And obviously, we have a Senator Wagner on the committee, so it's always fun to see him.
Thank you for attending that in my place.
Yeah.
Thank you. Aaron?
Thank you. 2 items tonight. One on the EMS front. Jeff Sargent, the county's EMS director, made a request to the cities of, the 4 cities in the county, just actually earlier this afternoon. I forwarded that on to all of your emails, so you've got it kind of word for word. But the specific request is for the cities to consider stepping up and devising a plan for fire-based delivery of EMS in that area that is essentially Arrow-Skagit's western boundary all the way to the county's western boundary out in the islands. So the chief and I are working with fire staff and with Doug to kind of take a look at what that could mean for Sedro-Woolley and develop some options, and that's what the chief wants to talk with the Police Fire Committee about. Timeframe's pretty short, so I anticipate we'll have conversations with the whole council here fairly soon about those options. Secondly, the Northern State Cemetery, we had what I'm calling the DAP strike team. That's the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. Came up today from Olympia. We had not one but 2 PhDs. We thought about bringing Doug along just so he could help keep it balanced on our side. But we had the state assistant state archaeologist, we had the state's physical anthropologist, and the state architect. So a pretty high-level team from DAP come up, tour the cemetery, and kind of lay out for us how they see cemetery maintenance occurring in the future and that process. I guess the good news is I think they're willing to help. You know, they've got information that we don't have in our possession. They've done this before, and they're willing to share that. They also have, and then the bad news is they also have a regulatory role, and will require that the city obtain a permit for any ground disturbing activity, even shallow ground disturbing activity. So the specific question is, if we've got a grave marker that's maybe below the surface 6 inches, can we just lift it up and put gravel under it? And the answer is, well, sure, after you've had an archaeological survey and you've devised a plan and you have an inadvertent discovery of remains plan and IDR, and you also have an archaeologist on site while you're doing that. So it's no problem. You can do all these things if you do that. But what about the fence? Can we just go ahead and get that updated? Absolutely, same thing applies. And of course, I couldn't help but to poke them a little bit. Well, what about all those new fence posts over there? Were there permits for those? Well, of course not. The state, who's owned and operated this since its inception, doesn't seem to have applied for or received the same permits that that the state will want us to receive. But we want to do this correctly. That's the big picture. Obviously, taking this on, it's different than the Sedro-Woolley Union Cemetery, which is a much older, much larger cemetery. But we don't let headstones disappear. So that's the new bridge we're trying to cross over, is how do we do the work we want to do up there. So we're gonna learn more, and I think it's going to involve spending more money than I would have imagined, which means that the dollars that will flow from the state to the city for this project probably won't go nearly as far as we might have hoped. I intend to apply for the cemetery grant program. It's a maximum $50,000 capital grant. That's due Friday. It's the first time they've done that, and I asked specifically, well, if I have to have an archaeologist develop a survey and a plan, can I include that as a grant expense? And the answer was, well, I don't think so. That doesn't sound like capital. Seems to me that getting the permit would be a grant reimbursable expense, but maybe not. So stay tuned. Anything that we put in that grant application will all be within the funds that are not current city dollars. So we'll bring that back to you after we get it applied for. Again, the deadline's Friday, so pretty short turnaround. And the thought is phase 1 would be driveway access, parking, fencing, lighting, so we can secure and get to it. Phase 2 then is the survey of what's up there, including possibly the ground penetrating radar and or the magnetometer survey and mapping. So it's trying to figure out what's going on there. And Brenda knew this, I didn't. The markers, there's about 700, or about 50% of the remains have markers, and those are only for full body burials. The cremains are all located between the full bodies and are apparently bundled. So they would save them up, box them, and pop those in just in between. They're not marked. We don't know who's who in the cremain area. We know who's there, but we don't know where. Different from the full bodies, where there is actually a map, and we're hopeful that if we get up there and just do a survey of the 300 to 400 markers that we can identify without excavating, that those could ultimately lay out on the grid where the state thinks that they should be. we know they won't all be there because we found a couple just today walking around that were clearly in the wrong place. So it's going to be an interesting project. I know Brenda's got a group of people who are chomping at the bit to get up there and be helpful. I think we may be able to form a partnership with Western to do some of this work through their anthropology department and through some of their technical programs, GIS and other programs that will help stretch that cost. But it's going to be a significant undertaking to get this cemetery brought back. Even just getting the grass cut to Moody standards is no small task, and we'll start that work next week. So, any questions on the cemetery? All right, well, stay tuned. That will become city property Friday.
Aaron, I have a comment I want to make about that. Last week, praises and accolades were given to the recent people who have worked on the project, but there's no way that the recent group could have done the work that we have done without the previous groups ahead of us doing what they did. They maintained the markers in a way that kept them visible and cleaned up, and if that hadn't happened, it would just be a blank field right now. So they deserve some recognition too.
Which group? Is that another volunteer group?
There's been several. Judy Torfin was part of a group a few years ago. Boy Scouts have been up there. High school groups have been up there. There's been a lot over the years that have spent, a period of time working on it.
Well, really, that story from 1972 until now is one that some effort should be taken to capture so that too can be shared.
Yeah,
the cemetery was probably in good shape when they closed the hospital. Now it's not, but it could have been way, way worse if it had not been cared for by the volunteers.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, I know almost nothing about that. Every day is all new information to me. So.
I'll try to gather it all together.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Doug?
I have a couple of items of interest for tonight. One of the efforts that we're working on in finance right now is looking at our policy development. And there are areas such as our financial policies, investment policies, and policies about how we issue debt or obtain debt for different projects and things. And one of the things I'd like to do is go back through and do a rewrite of some of those policies. There are some regulatory changes that have happened over the last few years that it's very prudent to get those incorporated into your documents, putting that in there. What I'd like to do is also have a section that outlines our internal controls, where if somebody reads that, they see our lines of approval authority and what different ways we have to make sure that we're safeguarding public funds when we do investing. Another policy that I'm looking at also is our debt policy, like I mentioned. We want to establish what types of debt we do. We want to outline the same roles and responsibilities, very similar to the steps we want to do with the investment policy. Both of these would also include a section on ethics and how we communicate what we're doing to City Council. I think those are really important to do in there. One of the tools that's available to cities is the State Treasurer's Office in Olympia will review your debt and investment policies and will certify those for you. So it's a good program to go through. It costs about $25 per policy to do it. But it's a really good thing to make sure that your policies are current and they've got all the comprehensive things they need. And the key thing that I always like about doing that too, as a finance department, we really want to maintain the public trust. And when you go through and have those policies certified and you live by those policies, it's a good step in maintaining that trust. So that's a very important thing for us to be doing. Other things we have going on, as you heard from Aaron and others, we're doing some reviews of our utility rate structure with the utility committee, as you know, and also the EMS project that came up. There is a little bit of a short timeline on that, but we've already had a meeting under our belts today, and we'll be moving forward on that, at least costing out the model so we can see what that will involve from the city standpoint. Those are the main things for my report tonight.
All right, thank you. And Judith? Brenda? Nothing? All right. Chuck?
No, nothing.
Carl?
make up for it then. Let's see. Wanted to thank the Sedro-Woolley Police Department, specifically the compliance officers, for getting some infractions on some parked cars on State Street that have been there for a while and been a bit of an eyesore, so the neighbors are happy to see some progress there. Note that Helping Hands Food Bank distribution day is usually on Wednesdays, so next Wednesday is the Independence Day, so they're moving that to the next day, which is Thursday the 5th. Additionally, we know the Lager Rodeo Carnival is coming down to Riverfront Park. Please come and enjoy. And my personal plug, please separate your recycling from your rubbish there. And a note on Riverfront Park, the ADA Anglers Pad. If you go down to the boat ramp, there's a cement pad with 2 rod holders, a couple of chairs, and that was built for Americans with Disability Act compliance. The non-native Himalayan blackberries have overgrown that area a little bit, and there was a comment by one of the campers who did have a disability about if I were to get a fish. Now, mind you, these sockeye have been a bit of a unicorn this season so far. 6 hours in the river myself, and probably donated 36 sand shrimps to the river gods. But they would have to get off the pad and actually walk down to the boat ramp to try to land that, and that didn't seem to be congruent with what that 88 pad is there for. So I didn't know if we needed to get some maintenance folks down there to make it a clearer path for them. Folks are using the campground for the fishing season, so that's good to see. Did you want to talk about utilities now or later?
Go ahead.
Okay. So we had a utilities committee meeting on Monday at 11 o'clock. It went until about 12:15. Paula Kelly is the chair of that. She's not here tonight. I'm a member, and so is Councilmember Kinzer. In attendance was myself, Councilmember Kelly, Finance Director Merriman, and our estimable Leo Jacobs from the Solid Waste and Fleet Supervisor. So the highlights is, if you've been following the news, you know that China is a big player in the world when it comes to recycling and waste. And they have made an ultimatum about their changes there. So not only is it affecting Sedro-Woolley, it's affecting the entire world. So we were offered 3 suggestions on our recycling program. Number 1 was to keep the recycling program and pass on the costs to the ratepayers. Choice number 2 is to modify the program to make it optional, add it on like a yard food waste program, or 3, discontinue the program and send everything to the landfill. So we discussed it at length, went through many spreadsheet, and talked about what we thought would be best, and that was option 1, which is to keep the recycling program and pass on those costs to the ratepayer. We're looking at a rate increase to our tipping rates from $42.95 per ton to $140.95 per ton. That's what the city's getting charged. According to our projections, that equals to about $1.33 per month increase per household. That's $1.33 per month per household. The new price would be $4.15 per household, or per unit for multifamily up to $2.82. So currently we service about 3,300 customers. So again, I see some notes being taken. We're currently doing $1.33 per month. We're going to go, new price would be $4.15 per household. Prices will increase for commercial recycling, but the increase varies depending on the size and quantity of the recycling. We will have to abide by the new accepted items list from Waste Management, who is our provider, and that's being driven by the changes in China. We can always evaluate any part of the recycling programs from year to year, and if we need any changes, we can adjust as necessary. So that that's what we discussed. We're very glad to have a financial person there to help crunch numbers and make the comparisons. So we also discussed that the enforcement of if you put trash in your recycle, now that entire can goes into the landfill. So you might contaminate the whole bin now, and that's really at cross purposes of what you're trying to do and what we're trying to do as a city as well. So, changes are happening. There's going to be some price increases with that, and we'd just like to alert you to that. And of course, we'll be talking more about that as the budget comes around going forward. So, thank you.
Right, and you just want to emphasize, so the utility meets, they go over all the information, they make recommendations to the council, and then we will eventually vote on it. We have not voted on it yet.
Correct.
So that's just basically a report what he's giving you with the utility council. So anything else?
To be safe and sane on Independence Day and have a good time out there.
All right, thank you, Carl. All right, so I have a couple of things. First, we want to do a shout-out to Nathan, who did a horrible cleanup. Apparently, there's somebody on the SAP road who was dumping gallons of urine and just leaving it there, and he went in and cleaned it up. It was a terrible mess. So ugly. But anyway, we want to thank him for doing that. He says probably one of the nastiest things he's ever had to clean up. And then on a lighter note, on Friday, you heard Aaron kind of allude to this, on Friday the state is turning over Northern State, now the Swift Center, to the port. There is a ceremony that's going to be happening. There'll be tours that will also be available up at the Swift Center. I do believe it starts at 1. And the governor is coming in.
10 o'clock is the public portion.
Okay, 10 o'clock, all right. And then the governor's coming in. So is this on our Facebook? So is there some place where they can go to see?
Well, we're still waiting to get the details of the day. So all I know for sure is at 10 o'clock at the hub, the public's invited to come out and tour the hub, and there'll be some presentations. The afternoon session's not a public event.
Okay. So there you have it. So FYI. All right, so now I'm going to open up public comments. It is 7:30. Is there anyone who would like to come up? Please remember to give your name and address and keep it to 3 minutes. Yeah. How you doing, Neil?
Pretty good. Sounds like Neil, and I know a guy named Neil, and I don't want to be called his name.
Okay, sorry, Dennis.
Anyway, I'm Dennis O'Neill, and I reside at 109 Telcott Street, Sedro-Woolley. Yeah, I had a couple questions, but I'm probably just going to go with one here. It's of concern to me what the city council and the mayor and city attorney has been doing on the library. I went through a couple of those hearings. I didn't hear anything mentioned about we weren't going to have enough parking, or the square footage of the feed mill is going to be too short for the projected footage of the library. And it seems like even the paper, when they announced that Sedro-Woolley is buying another lot next door to the feed mill, they didn't say anything about the iron skillet. And I think there's a lot of people in town don't know the iron skillet's doomed to come down. I've talked to a number of them. They're always surprised because they don't get the information. I asked Aaron when I was running for office before I dropped back about it, and of course everybody wanted to come down to the Central Business District. It was a big place to be because we're going to generate more jobs and bring more business into town and do this and do that. There wasn't anything mentioned about the railroad track in any of those presentations that it had to be removed. There wasn't any mention in there the square footage is going to be short. And now here we are, and I'm looking at the budget. They got $536,000 for the purchase price. Nothing said about the 10 to 12 jobs that are gone. Nothing said in here about the fact they got to level and haul that stuff away. And there's going to be other costs come up. There's nothing in there about 10 to 12 people losing their jobs. I talked to one council member, and he mentioned, well, it was on the market for 2 years. Gee whiz, what was so bad about the city buying it? and my response should have been, businesses don't sell like houses. Sometimes it takes 4 or 5 years, and normally the price comes down over a period of time to where the buyers, you inform buyer, inform seller, it's sold. You got a 10% reduction on a piece of property that sat out there for 2 years. I think you overpaid, and unfortunately you knocked a business out that was the sole purpose of moving to the Central Business District was to build businesses down there, not to take one away, not to take jobs away. And we all know that everything, utility taxes have gone up at least twice, maybe 3 times. Julia, you've talked about the fact that, property taxes are probably going to have to go up. I agree. I think the Mayor Wagner even stated that this budget was short going in, that there was going to have to be a tax adjustment. We're really going to need one now, because $536,000 on here is a joke. You're going to have to tear the building down and haul it all away. And I don't think that's going to be very cheap. It just seems to me that, somebody told me the other day that they're still doing core samples over there. But we've already, I think, paid for the feed mill. I don't understand who was supposed to be looking at square footage on that building, looking at the footprint, and checking that stuff. We don't go out and buy a house without putting contingencies on it, like a building inspection and all the rest of it. And I know that there wasn't very many properties to buy in this town, but it seems like you're trying to cover up a mistake that was made initially. Now you've got a railroad track and a mound of dirt between the library and the downtown area. It's on the back end of the downtown area. Nobody, as far as I can see, nobody's going to go necessarily from the library to downtown to have a sandwich. And it doesn't look that great over there anyway. I'm sorry, I live right next to it. It's a base, and so is Brenda. It's sort of like on that side. For now, it's the poor side of town. Maybe re-energize that side of town. But there is so much more property in this town. I did ask Aaron about this, and my thought was you could have put a building right next to the existing library, something like United General, where you walk through a corridor, and it's really nice. They have those sunlit areas in the middle where they have tables in there and everything. You could have hooked up a building next to it. This is a city council. You can make adjustments to the laws. You can rule on that. Nobody ever, as far as I know, even thought about it. You're all too busy trying to get downtown. Traffic's already bad, at any time downtown. The library's certainly not going to help that. And then you got, if anybody gets up in the morning and drives downtown, the first place to eat a full meal in this town is the Iron Skillet. And that place is always packed because people like going there. They support it. You've just cut revenue, you've cut jobs, and you've increased the amount of money the city has to come up with to support that library. That wasn't in the initial projections. And if it was, I would like to see the dated thing when it was presented to everybody that this might be coming up. It was never discussed. You're getting an awful lot of surprises, and it doesn't seem to really bother anybody up there too much. It's really starting to bother me if you guys are really sitting back and asking questions yourself. How did this happen? You were on the council, you, Chuck. You're sitting there saying, well, how did this happen? We got people in place that should be checking these things out. What went wrong? Because you're getting more and more mistakes and they're building up. I know my time's just about up. Tell me when. But anyway, I always wanted to get that point out there because it's going to come up again and again. You're going to be raising taxes, and this is going to add more. Sorry, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And anytime you want to come in to my office to talk about this, so you're raising some good points, but also you've got some misinformation, and I would be happy to discuss it with you. I really would.
Well, I would.
And obviously you're representing a portion of the public that feels the same way. So anytime you want to come in and talk, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, I think it'd be neat if somebody addressed these. This is recorded. Somebody has a question, you can say, hey, we're not going to make a one-on-one. We dealt with this. We addressed Dennis's concerns. It's on a recording.
Yeah,
Tune in.
We do that sometimes, and I'm trying to address it, but this is just comment, public comment. So I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Hello, Corinne Jensen, 739 Sap Road. Last City Council meeting, I asked for the city's support with letting us use the Riverfront Park for Art in the Park and Community Talent Show on August 25th of this year. I would just like to confirm that the city is willing to work with the Arts Council of Sedro-Woolley to put on Art in the Park and Community Talent Show. Also, I would like to ask for the Art in the Park and Community Talent Show with the Arts Council and with the city be designated as a community event and put on that on the city website. And I also would like to just share that I have Sedro-Woolley Museum coloring pages and history. They're $10 suggested donations, so if anyone would like to purchase them, please contact me. This is our fundraiser, so we can continue to raise funds to do some of the art projects that, to designate getting people to come downtown and just have more clear signage to bring people downtown. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. I also have a sign-up sheet at the back. If anyone is interested in volunteering or participating in the Art in the Park and Community Talent Show, please sign up and let me know. Thank you.
Corianne, so did you come into City Hall and fill out a form? Did you do that already? Okay. So I'm
just penciled in right now.
Okay.
I just wanted to verify that you would waive the fees for the usage of the park for the amphitheater and for the
talent show?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the pavilions.
So that's what you're requesting. Okay. I just want to make sure that you did that, going through the
I have the forms with me.
Okay. Did you have a question, Carl?
Yeah, I kind of saw Aaron kind of bumping in here, so I defer first, and then I have some questions.
Yeah, so I think what she's looking for is the designation of the community event status. So it still requires the special event permit, just like we do with Log Rodeo. But that one, for example, is a permanently designated special event that opens the door to the use of the park facilities free of charge, as opposed to through our process where they can be a community user. It also opens the door to possibly rolling out mobile vendors without those vendors having to pay the $1,000 business license. So tonight you designated, for example, the Little League's 2018 state championship as a community event on the consent calendar. This will be the same request. And I do intend to bring to you at some point, it's been on my list of things to do, the Rotary's Summer Concert Series, which we treat like a community event, but I don't think we've technically designated it as such.
So August 25th, you want that to be an annual event? So this year it'll be August 25th?
Yes, I would like to, I was trying to get it on Sunday, just because people are used to going to Riverfront Park and enjoying the concert in the park. And so next year I would like to work with the Rotary to make it end of, I'd like to do it the weekend before Labor Day, just to get a hold of the traffic that people coming in and out of the of Highway 20. So next year I would like to do it on that Sunday, but this year Snelson is having their company picnic that day, so I chose to do it on Saturday.
Okay. So is this going to come before the council? Is that what you're going to do, Aaron, is write it up and bring it before the council? Or?
Well, I think if the council is comfortable, you could, I realize it's public comment, but you could certainly make a motion to designate the Art in the Park as a community event, or it can come back as a memo. This is something the city has done in the past, so It's certainly not a new activity for the city.
I love the idea that you're bringing it back. Thank you for your energies doing that. So do I have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, as a past volunteer for this esteemed event and great cultural jewel of the use of our city park, I would like to make a motion that Arts in the Park and Community Talent Show, that we waive the usage fees for the amphitheater and the pavilions and make this a community event so it can be posted on the website. I just need a little break here. Do we need to do something with the special event permit, Aaron?
No, the staff handle that.
Okay, so there's no waiving of that. Okay, so that's the motion, is to waive usage fees for the amphitheater and the pavilion and make it a community event so it can have access to our
An
resources.
annual community event?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second,
Okay, all right, so we have a motion by Councilmember DeYoung to waive the usage fees and make the Art in the Park and Talent Show an annual community event, preferably in August, it sounds like.
Yes, the weekend before Labor Day.
And a second by Councilwoman Kinzer. Any questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great, fantastic.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you're in the mood, if you wouldn't mind a similar motion designating the summer concert series as a community event under 12.36.025.
What Aaron said?
That would help me out on a memo later.
Do you want to write that out so we can get it to the clerk, or I'd like to move that?
It's on the tape. You can so move.
Okay, I can. All right, I so move.
Second. So we have a motion by DeYoung and seconded by Kinzer to make the
Rotary Summer Concert Series a designated community event under Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code 12.36.025.
fantastic. All in
you.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
And I will, I will bring that back to you. We'll go ahead and put it in the code, but the code allows, just so you know, the code does allow, it says, quote, additional events may be authorized at the discretion of the council, which I interpret to mean what you do tonight can essentially supplement the code. The code specifically calls out Founders Day, Logger Rodeo, including the 4th of July, the City of Lights Festival, and Thanksgiving. So I'll bring back an ordinance that will clean that up and add those events in on a more permanent basis. Things like the athletic activities, those are probably more appropriately done as one-offs because we probably won't have the state championship here every year.
Right.
But these events seem to be developing an annual activity. So anyway, I'll bring that back to you in the future.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay. We continue on. Public comment. Name and address in 3 minutes.
Wendy Gramberg, 1009 Pulte Road. It's really hard for me to understand how this library plan has gone from bad to worse. The current library, and my numbers are very rough here based on public information that's been handed out at the various meetings. The current library with the 2 locations combined is roughly 8,300 total square feet, with the collection being actual books, magazines, etc., takes up roughly 50%, roughly 4,200 square feet. I asked multiple architects here if I could get the specifics on square footage of the building and the percentage of that would be designated for the collection, but no one seemed to know. So with the information that's been handed out at other meetings, my understanding is the current library would be roughly 1,200 square feet, with roughly 25% of that, or 12,000 square feet, roughly 4% of that dedicated to the collection, which is 25%. So less than the current percentage at the current library, less square footage than what is provided for the current location for the current collection. A library is designed to house books and information. I think it's great. You have open space for meetings, groups, STEM, STEAM. You've gone on and on about how Sedro-Woolley and Skagit County is the STEM and STEAM capital of the Northwest. So why would you duplicate that opportunity in the library? Students at all the schools are getting it. It just seems very poorly planned. It seems like this design that was shown to us today is probably it. My understanding in asking questions to the architects, there might be a few tweaks, but that's basically it. I agree with everything that Dennis said. Originally, one property that could have been used was the old Alfie's in downtown Sedro-Woolley, right? Excuse me, not downtown, but the old Alfie's. Nobody wanted that space because that would take away business and revenue and taxes and dollars, but you're fine tearing down the iron skillet. here we are at public comment, you have the public commenting, you're saying we're misinformed, but you don't want to give us the correct information, so it just seems very odd.
Okay.
Is that funny? Well, would you like to provide it? I mean, we're misinformed, so then why don't you give us the correct information?
Madam Chair, I move the agenda.
Sure.
We have, I'm trying to remember from the scheme there, early childhood development, wouldn't that have the books that are appropriate for little teeny kids? And the teen center, wouldn't that have the books that are appropriate for that age group? Are all the books going to be down the center? I don't think so.
My comment
That's just my feeling.
My comment isn't regarding that. All of the locations of all the books and all the different rooms comes up to be about, as I stated, 4,000 square feet, which is 25%. So out of a building designed to hold books, 25% of that is being used to hold books, or the collection, which is magazines, DVDs, etc.
So getting back to your question regarding the iron skillet, Reba was very willing to sell it. She had it on, she did, I don't know who talked to
I guess
Dennis,
my comment isn't whether
can I
she's
finish what I
willing
would
to
You
sell
asked the
it.
question,
It's
I'm
just
answering. You asked the question, I'm answering. So she did. She wanted to sell it. We gave her a fair price, and she took it. So we're not trying to take away the business. That was something that she wanted to do. She said she wanted to retire.
The issue is it's so utterly contradictory to what you said you wanted to do, is bring the library downtown to draw business. You didn't want to go in the Alfie's restaurant, but you don't have a problem taking down the iron skillet.
It is downtown.
As I said, it seems very contradictory. Thanks.
Okay. All right, anybody else? All right, well, we'll close public comment at 7:49. So moving on to unfinished business, we have a possible adoption of a Council 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. This is the second reading.
I'll channel my inner Mark.
Okay.
Actually, there's really nothing to add. This Mark went over this in some detail at the last meeting. It's gone through public process with the Planning Commission, and he detailed, I think, in some specificity in his memo all of the changes between the current TIP and the proposed TIP. It's part of a time-sensitive process. We need to get our TIP adopted so it can be sent off to the Council of Governments for inclusion in the county-level TIP, that then goes to the state for the inclusion in the state-level TIP and is available for funding.
All right, any questions?
Madam Mayor?
This is on page 75.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion, a resolution adopting the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program known as TIP for the City of Sedro-Woolley, Washington, 2019 to 2024.
All right, so I had a motion by Councilmember DeYoung for Resolution 996-18. It was seconded by, did you answer that? Okay. Sorry. I wasn't sure if you said it or not. And it was seconded by Councilmember Owen. So any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There is no new business. Is there any questions or concerns regarding the informational items? Okay. Anything for the good of the order? All right. No executive session, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
All right. So we have a motion by DeYoung, seconded by Kinzer. Motion carries.